This year, we are honoring Ellen VanDerBosch, the director of Textwich, a nonprofit devoted to finding the individual users living on the streets of Southern California and making sure they are safe, fed, clothed, and whenever possible, getting the treatment and shelter they need. Ellen's efforts to do so have been greatly hampered by the pandemic, as very few people have been willing to walk the streets and find the suffering and even the quality of the substances available to these young people has gone down. She'll tell us more about that. When Ellen's parents, who lived in Illinois, needed to downsize their home and find assisted living arrangements, Ellen moved from California to Chicago for a year. And during that time, her 25-year-old son was serving a 6-month jail sentence, followed by going into the Salvation Army rehab for 6 months. 2 weeks into the rehab, her son Max left and Ellen wasn't notified. He ended up missing for 5 long, terrifying months. A woman named Jody Barber, who's an amazing peer parent advocate for prevention and harm reduction, ended up finding him. To pay it forward, in 2015, Ellen started finding missing rehab runners whose parents were typically out of state, a situation Ellen was far too familiar with. It started with a few kids, and before they knew it, dozens of people had been found. In 2016, Ellen incorporated the organization she built with 3 other integral moms and called it Textwich. Using bagged lunches, bottles of water, or even socks, and burning a lot of shoe leather, they distributed these items to the homeless in the areas where she thought her missing subjects were. And they still do that to this day. They have a note attached from the missing person's mother or family with their pictures. The recipients then give her team tips and clues, and they've tracked down about 40% of those missing, both by searches and online flyers. Wow, that's a lot. That's amazing. Sadly, not all of these stories have a happy ending. How could they? These people living on the street are in real crisis. Many are mentally ill and/or in a drug-induced state. The wonderful thing is there are incredible success stories as well. Ellen is equally as passionate about helping the families of the loved ones. There's a closed group called Textwich Moms who love street kids, with over 350 members working together to help each other and their loved ones. Ellen lives in Long Beach with her dedicated boyfriend, Ben, who's the security and operations manager of Textwich. She's been in the mortgage industry since 1985 and is a loan officer. Her story revolves around her son, Max, and his 12-year journey through substance abuse and mental health challenges. Welcome, Ellen. Ellen, we've combined this. We know Ellen is very busy. She works as a loan officer, which if any of you have ever known loan officers, they work long hours and they work very hard. And she's doing that during the week. And she's relegated this amazing project only to the weekends. So we couldn't get her on the weeknight daily BALM. Instead, we decided to turn this honorary ceremony into part honoring ceremony and part daily BALM. And she's agreed to be interviewed because I know that you guys want to know more about her, and our whole community wants to as well. So we're going to actually put this interview up on the daily BALM. Ellen, you've been doing this work for the past 6 years. Could you tell us more about how you came to be interested in America's street children and adults?
Basically because my son was one of them. And when you realize they're all somebody's kids, they all belong to somebody, and there really is not a lot of help out here for them. They get bounced around a lot. And so do the parents when they, if you have a kid that's missing, you can fill out a police report, but really nothing's going to be done unless they kind of interact with them almost by chance. You might get notified if they arrest them, but it's not like they usually do all these all-out searches, which you would expect them to do, but they don't. So, it's just a need that needed to be filled. And the pain of having my son always on the street, he is right now, if I can't help him, I found by helping others, it really helped me to give some sort of purpose to this sad turn our lives took.
Yeah. So your son is out on the street and you know where he is, or is he missing at this time?
I could probably find him right now. He's in Santa Ana, but he won't. He's been battling mental illness, addiction, but he has a horrific foot injury that he's neglected that's compounding, and he will not go to the doctors. He was assaulted in a hospital before, and that's why he won't go. There's a reason why, but to his own detriment, he won't go.
Right.
And the cops, I had a 5150 medical situation that the paramedics presented the paperwork. And, I have a video of the cops just standing there with their arms folded. And they said, no, call the crisis intervention team. You call the crisis intervention team and they're like, we'll take the report and maybe somebody will call you back, but they never did. And then they say, they're over 18. We can't give you the information. And it's like they're just being hung out to dry, and they're mentally ill. That's the problem. Like most of the kids that I'm dealing with have a condition that they don't think anything's wrong at all.
Mhm.
You can't convince them any differently. My son can look at an open wound that's grotesque and oozing and bloody and still convince himself nothing's wrong. And the same with his head and his, the using. And what I've seen with all of our kids, just about it, they're deteriorating on the street. It's almost like everything's going on fast forward. It's
Talk about that with the pandemic.
yeah.
What have you seen out there on the streets? Like,
Because
tell us about what it was like before and what you've noticed since the pandemic.
I can almost barely remember what it was like before the pandemic because we've been knee deep in it now for over a year. But, we used to have Be Fed and Be Found events, and I could pull up a taco truck in Skid Row or speak in front of a tent city with, 400 homeless people. And then we do a wall of missing people like this behind me. And all of those events had to stop, because of the pandemic. Then you still have kids that are missing and their parents still need to know where they are. So when we could, we went out, but I had to stop going out because I live with other people that I can't bring sickness into the house and risk
Right.
them. So we all did what we could. And I did all these clandestine missions where I could, if I thought I could get to the kid right away and back home without spending a lot of time. But once everybody got vaccinated and I got back out there to see just the condition, they're thinner. They look like they're not eating as much because they're not. Their usual methods might have been shelters that aren't open anymore or panhandling. When there's a pandemic, people may not
Everybody's on this.
interact with you right away.
Right.
And the stores weren't open like they were, or some of the business. It just seemed like everything was harder for them. Then the drugs, the supply, the synthetic stuff that they're manufacturing here, it's messing with their minds more. I'm watching a lot more psychosis, a lot more. It's like walking zombies. It's hard. I mean, I hate to say I miss heroin because that was horrible, but the fentanyl, like they don't have the attention span of more than a 30, 45 seconds in some cases. If they're on this stuff, you can't even talk to them. They're literally spinning around, and it's just sad. They need help and they're not getting it, and they just keep feeding their addiction, and they're just chasing their next high and slowly dying doing it, and to their own detriment. And that's what it's so hard. When they want help, there's not the beds available, and then a lot of times they're treated with, I can't even tell you, I've gone into emergency rooms and my kids have been ignored. They will be walked right past, and everybody else might be treated or looked after. And I look around, everybody else is gone. And I'm like, hello, we're still here. What's going on? And you literally have to shake trees. They treat people like they're less than in some of these hospitals out here. And it's in the jails. Same thing, that like the compassion is gone. So it's harder, and so when we latch onto them and they see that there's people that care, they're not used to seeing that. It's hard on the streets. They don't show, they can't show their soft side to very many people, but we surprise them and show up, and then we show up again and again and again after I find them, and we do these regular stops. Some of these kids I've visited for years, and to see where they are now, grateful for the ones that have made it out, but the ones that are still there, we can do more.
So you were telling me that you might have somebody who's ready to go to treatment, and you call a place and it's like a 3 to 4 month waiting list. What's that about?
Oh, it just happened to my son. He was missing in Mexico for about a month. Literally found him in a rehab of all places. And then when we brought him back here to get him into the system, to get to the point where you can even get the interview, to get the appointment for the rehab and the housing, everything's 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks apart. It's June 30th. We're going to get you in on July 27th. You have somebody that wants help now, and
Yeah.
the Suboxone, the Sublocade, or whatever the medicine, without the counseling or whatever we can do to reach them, they're just like shells. It's like, I didn't get him back. I got him back physically, but he was literally just sleeping or eating, and that was about it. He wasn't talking. It was completely shut down. And again, it went back to, I couldn't get him into the hospital. If I could get him to College Hospital and somebody would help him, that would be awesome. But he will not willingly walk into a hospital for any, I think unless he's in an ambulance and unconscious is the only way he'll go. And, God forbid that could be too late. So, and he's just one of many kids like that, that I see all the time, in varying degrees of this. And it's sad,
It's very sad. So what, all right, first let's talk about how many kids do you serve at any one time? How many have you served over the years? How many do you serve at any one time?
Well, in our closed group of moms, there's probably just under 400 families, and not all of them are active in there or not. But in LA, there's probably a dozen or kids or so that I see on a regular basis, maybe less than, or they come and go depending on what they're doing in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But we always have this revolving case of actively missing people,
Mm-hmm.
ones that have been hurt the most, because we can't do the searches like we used to, the B-feds. Like, we just now started getting out there again, and I'm building up the volunteers again. And in the time, obviously, me just doing it 8 days a month is, it's not as not what we need. We need more.
Right.
Everybody's doing what we can, but these kids need me more than 8 days a month. But
Right.
yeah.
So you were saying that right before the pandemic, you were starting to have partnerships with, or before you were in general having partnerships with sober livings and treatment centers. What happened to all of that?
Yeah, groups would come out. We would do these, I call them Be Found and Be Fed events. And, you'd get volunteers would be coming from different recovery groups or sober living places. And my food truck literally went out of business. That was a pandemic
Yeah, right.
loss. She wasn't making money. So she did many, many, many events for us. So it's me now trying to find, and I'm sure given the right time and everything, I could drum up more business and try and find another food truck and stuff. But, it's so hard when I do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But we just are moms with sandwiches doing what we can. And
Right.
we're putting out fires with thimbles. But, if we can get it off the street, it's worth it. And we've got a few. So,
I mean, I could just imagine if you had, what you needed in terms of advertising and everything else, that you could probably have these in you could have stations in cities across the country, because we have homeless kids who are just walking out the doors of rehabs in a lot of places. It isn't just Southern California, although Southern California has millions of street kids. I mean,
it's spread out, and it's a problem. And, by the grace of God, I have some sort of gift, or I'm a vessel. I can't explain it, but I usually know where to start looking for them. Sometimes I know a couple of days before a case comes, like something's going to happen, specifically where.
wow.
Like weird stuff, like, and I just learned that that's a calling or a gift that I follow, and I take it seriously. And, and
That's amazing.
since I heard the Go Now that found the first boy, or the second kid that was walking in the rain, I literally had a calling experience, and it was go now, go now, go now. And I was sick. I was in bed. I got up, I got dressed. I knew I had to go to Costa Mesa. I got off the freeway. I went in. Within 2 minutes, I saw this kid walking in the rain. And from the back, he looked like the kid that I was looking for, that I thought was in distress. Turned out when he turned around, I saw that it wasn't the same guy, but this guy was in trouble. Started talking to him, realized he was missing from a rehab stint 5 months prior. His parents hadn't talked to him, and got him back home to his parents. And I just said to him, I was out here looking for somebody else, and you look like him. Can I show you his picture? And I showed him the picture, the flyer, and he goes, "That's Shaggy." I said, "Yeah." I go, "You know him?" He goes, "Yeah. I was in the hospital with him on Monday night." I said, "That's right. I'm out here because he was in the hospital, because he was beat up." And I said, "Why were you in the hospital?" And he said, "I overdosed." And they just picked me up off the sidewalk. And so, something told me to get to Corey to find this kid that was sitting right next to the kid that I was looking for in a hospital bed. They both needed help. And I found both of them through each, it was just like the weirdest coincidences that each case seemed to turn into stuff like that. The very first kid, I literally handed him his own lunch. It was on my third attempt, and it was the second person that day. I literally handed him his own lunch with his face on there. And I thought, oh my goodness. So this is something that you can do in any city, anywhere. And even on a bad day, we feed the homeless. And then, people are feeding them anyways, but we're just putting messages and doing more actions and finding them. So, working with shelters and all these other groups, we had momentum and things going. And I just feel like we have to start all over again. And, and it's almost like somebody just picked up a board game and shook everything up, and all the pieces are somewhere else. And I don't even know where we are anymore,
Well, it sounds like you're guided, and it sounds like there's some BALM connection here, because as Helene shared, some of you may not have heard, exactly a year ago at the last retreat, was it a year ago? Was it or was it the February retreat? October? October retreat, you're muted, Helene. Helene was at the retreat. She spoke with Nadia, who's one of the families, who connected her with Geraldine from Pennsylvania, who connected her with Ellen. And now a year later, here is Ellen. And Ellen, you know, what you're doing, I mean, I wanted you on for a lot of reasons. One is just to honor you for the work that you're doing there, but for the grace of God, it could be any of our kids. And we all know that more than anybody else, you know. And at the same time, we're all involved in work here so that we can do our best to not have our kids, our loved ones end up in this situation. But we also know there are no guarantees, right? And I just want to honor Helene for her relentless work over the years, trying to find her son and finding Ellen and bringing her to us. And, you know, there may be people on this call who want to help in one way or another. Ellen, how could they help your cause?
Well, we have a website. It's textwich.org.
Could you spell that, please? And maybe we'll put it in the, could someone put it in the chat?
EXT.
TEXT.
Wich, WICH. So it's a message on a sandwich. That's how I got the name. Text Wich.
Oh.
Yeah, a text, because most homeless people don't have a phone. So, you know, it's a message on a sandwich, a text, a message. It's kind of like a play on words.
That's
But that's
awesome.
how I thought of it, as a message on a sandwich. And that's how we got the name. So it's textwich.org.
And so if someone wanted to donate, they could, on that website, there's a
Yeah, there's a
place to
link.
donate. And if they want to volunteer, or if, I mean, if they know someone who might need your services, they would just go to that website to
Go
be
to the
connected.
website. We also have a Facebook group, Textwich Volunteers, in Southern California. We have a very big group in Philadelphia, Missing in Philly. And it's based of all these people missing in Kensington. And there's probably over 3,000 families in that group.
Wow.
And then I have the closed group of families that have kids that live on the street, and we help each other and each other's kids out. To me, that's the heart of the group. You can't always help your kid, but if you can help somebody else's kid while we're trying to figure out what we can do with your kid, then everybody's working together and you're not alone, and we're stronger together and we get stuff done. And, you know, and I don't do this alone, even though I'm like the face of Textwich. The other moms are behind the scenes and, you know, helping me with the donations and making the flyers. And, you know, I have a mom in New York I've not even met in person, but I've sat with her son in a hospital for 4 days. And because I did that, she devoted her life to making all my flyers. That was like 6 years ago. I've never met her.
Wow.
Person, you know, and she, to this day, she's still making those flyers.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
You know, I would just love to grow this the way it seems very organic. Like it's something that you can do anywhere. It's not hard, and you know, it works. You can't dispute how many people we have found. So.